Chavre, how are you? Today is Erev Shabbos Kodesh. Parshas told us this past Sunday was the great Kinus HaShluchim, the great conference of all of the Rebbe's emissaries around the world, the International Kinus HaShluchim. And obviously we have to understand the connection between Parshas told us and what message do we have in our service of Hashem, etc. But first, as usual, I forgot to mention, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, und freilich, begashmis beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. As usual, from here on in, we're going to give tzedakah. Gedel tzedakah Shem HaKarev Sagula, Mashiach should come now. We'll say a prayer connected to our thought today. Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, blessed are you, Hashem, Hamechin Mitzadei Gover, which means that He prepares who directs the steps of man. So you could think to yourself, Hashem directs the steps of man, which first of all talks about the ability that we can walk and we can go, we can get places. But you might think to yourself, He directs the steps of man. Well, what's my input? What's my contribution? And this is what we're going to talk about today. And by the way, today we're also going to talk about, since we're talking about the idea of the shluchim, so, there's been many studies. What is the secret of success of Chabad? Because the success is beyond words. The Rebbe, through his emissaries, literally lifted up the entire world. It doesn't make a difference where a Jew is. It's Turkey, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Kentucky, Idaho, Paris, Caracas, etc., etc. If you would have told this to somebody 30 years ago, as the saying goes, wherever there's Coca-Cola, there's Chabad, they would say, you're out of your mind. It's not possible. So what is the secret of Chabad, the success of Chabad? In 2014, which was 20 years after Gimel Tammuz 1994, there were a lot of articles written, people that were studying the phenomenon of Chabad. But I think there's one point that they missed, even though they brought out another point. So, in order to get into the whole subject, what I'm going to speak today is based on a talk of the Rebbe, Misichas Shabbos Parshas told us, Tafshin Memches. And by the way, even though the Rebbe doesn't connect the point that I'm going to bring out now with the name of the Parsha, but we'll also connect it to the name of the Parsha. So, my friends, the answer of what is the secret of the Chabad movement based on the whole idea of Shlichus actually is in the concept, in the Haggadah of what is a Shliach. So, in the Sikha of Toldos Tafshin Memches, the Rebbe said as follows: that in this week's Parsha told us we have the first Shliach, and that's at the end of the Parsha, Kapitel Chav Ches, Posik Hey, and Yitzchok tells Yaakov that Vayishlach Yitzchok es Yaakov. Yitzchok sends Yaakov, and it says Vayishlach, and he sends Yaakov to go get a wife. Vayelech Padana Aram Elovan, etc. The next pasuk says Vayar Esav ki beirach Yitzchok es Yaakov v'shilach Esau Padana Aram. Esav saw the way Yaakov blessed him and Yitzchok sent Yaakov to Padan Aram. And then it says, the next pasuk, Vayishma Yaakov Elovav Elimai Vayelech Padan Aram. And Yaakov listened to his parents and he went on this mission as an emissary to get a wife. So here the Rebbe says that even though many times the Rebbe spoke in Parshas Chayei Sarah, and we spoke last week about the idea of Eliezer being a shliach from Avram to get a wife for Yitzchak, but actually the model of Eliezer is not the real model, because Eliezer is an Eved, literally translated a slave or a subject. Mashek and Yaakov is a shliach. And here the Rebbe goes into the two models. There's a shliach and there's an eved. And what's the difference between them? And why in the Rebbe's work, the term and the proper term and the correct term is shliach. And the contrast is startling. But first, let's talk about two streams, which we've spoken about many times in the past couple of years, that in my humble opinion, these two streams, these two train of thoughts, these two paths, cover every single concept of Chassidus. Every single maimer of Chassidus, every single sikha of Chassidus, any discourse of Chassidus, you can find these two ideas. And what are the two ideas? One idea is bittul, translated as self-nullification, or if we want, transcendence. And the other contrasting idea is yichud, unification, / zichuch, refinement. So there's bittul, which represents nullification, transcendence, in contrast to unification, transformation, refinement. Now, we could give this talk, and we've spoken about it so many other times, and it can go on and on and on, but we'll talk about it just primarily. Okay, we'll start with how it's in relation to Hashem himself. There's two ways how we talk about the world and how the world is connected to Hashem. One way is we have to bring out how there's no existence besides Hashem. Nothing's really in existence. And that's what it means that kula kameh kala choshev. Nothing in relation to the Eibishter is considered as something. Because anything finite in relation to infinity is considered like nothing. And that's a subject that's called bittul ha'olamus, the nullification of the worlds. And in many deep Chassidic discourses, we discuss how a person is supposed to meditate different layers and different levels of the bittul ha'olamus, how the worlds are nothing compared to God himself. There's one level of bittul, another level of bittul, even a deeper level of bittul. That's bittul ha'olamus. Kula kameh kala choshev. Nothing is anything. But then there's another concept, which is achdus havaya. How Hashem is united with the world. Not that he's supposed to think of the world as nothing. On the contrary, see how the world is a world. And how the cow goes moo 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 and the duck goes quack quack quack. And as the cow goes moo moo moo, it is united and reflects divinity. Morabu masach Hashem, magodlu masach Hashem. Creation reflects godliness and divinity. Not by destroying it, but by seeing God through it, in it, from within, from the world. Both concepts are true. In the language of Chassidus and Kabbalah, this is really the two lights of Hashem. One is called Soviv Kolam, that's connected more to Bittul ha'olamus. The other one's called Mamalik Kolam, that's connected more to Yichud and Zichuch ha'olamus. We can't elaborate. Now let's talk about Avodas Hashem. On the one hand, Yiddishkeit is based on Nasa Koydem L'Nishma. Just, yes, sir. Obedience. That's why Hashem gave us the Torah. As the famous Gemara, Hashem went through all the nations and asked them if they want the Torah. They said, what's in it? Is it worth it or not? What's in it for me? Only the Yidden said, Nasa v'nishma, Nasa koydem l'nishma. First they said, we will do. And then we'll hear what is involved. So, and that's why we got the Torah. Because of our level of subservience to Hashem. So, if we look at it that way, what's the idea? What's the basis? How do we serve Hashem? What makes us unique? Kabbalas el malchus shamayim, that we are ready to take to take upon ourselves the yoke of Hashem, to serve Hashem. But on the other hand, we have a commandment. Know God, understand God. And also, love Hashem. So if we go and we emphasize the idea of Kabbalah sale, just subservience or surrender, so that means I take my brains and I take my heart, throw it aside. What's going on in my mind and heart? Who cares? The main thing is, do what you're told. We're not interested in your ideas or your feelings. What's important is to carry out the orders. But on the other hand, we're saying no, understand and feel, get involved intimately, internally with your character traits. And the truth is we need both. And that's why on one hand, we have the idea of subservience, bittul. And on the other hand, we have the idea of internal character transformation, that it's in sync and united with who you are. So how these two things go together, now we cannot discuss the whole thing right now in this year. But now let's get to the point of our talk today. Now the same thing is in the model of Bnei Yisrael and our relationship with Hashem. There's two models. There's im kibbonim, im kavodim. Im kavodim, im kibbonim. We call out to Hashem, Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. That means the innovation, the novelty in our relationship with Hashem is that we are connected and united from every single which way. So we have the advantage of a relationship which represents total obedience. That's like Eved, Malkeinu. We are like a subject to a king, a slave to a king. But also Bonim. We're like a Ben, a child to a father. Hashem, we're like the prince. Not the slave of the king, but the prince. What is the difference between the two? And this is the contrast. The difference is, when you have a slave, and you're talking to the slave, and you give the slave instructions, you can even say a soldier, and you say, do you understand? When you say, do you understand? And you're asking the soldier, do you understand? Do you care that the soldier understands the motive and what's behind the instruction? No. You need him to carry out the orders, to carry out the instructions. For example, let's say it's your general, and it's a major battle, it involves thousands of soldiers, and there's different areas of the battlefield, diversion, who knows what, whatever. You give one company, one unit orders, they have to carry out their orders. They don't know how it fits into the whole general plan, because that's not their mission. What they're meant to do is follow orders. But if you're a prince, let's say a teacher and a student, I'm just giving you another example, and the teacher says, do you understand? He wants you to understand. It doesn't mean understand because you're a robot, and he wants to make sure you carry through the mission faithfully. He wants you to understand because he wants to be able to make, you should be able to make decisions one day yourself. He's teaching you something, you're learning something, and that's what it means. Do you understand? Now, the Rebbe, so in other words, when we have Eved, we have the mile of Bittul. When we have Ben, we have the mile of Yichud. The father wants that the son shouldn't be a slave to the father. He wants that the child should have a certain sense of individuality, and that individuality itself should reflect the values and the virtues of the parent. That's the point. And this the Rebbe says in the Sikha, and this is the answer to the genius of Chabad. The Rebbe says the difference between Shliach and Eved is in two ways primarily. One way is that the title, the term, Eved, represents a pchisus. It shows in the lowliness of the position. You're a slave. You're a subject. And the idea behind it is submission, surrender, subservience, obedience. But we don't look at you as an individual. And the term represents something which is low. Mashenkin, when we say the term shliach, and we say shluch shlodem kimoisoi, the whole point of the term represents a closeness and an importance. You're an important person. I was thinking to myself, in English language, the two closest terms that I think also represent the idea of shliach, which could be translated emissary, agent, ambassador is very good. But another two terms that I think are fantastic is next of kin and power of attorney. I thought of it today. When somebody nominates a power of attorney, it means that if I'm not available for whatever reason, I nominated a power of eternity that he has power, so it's a fantastic word. I'm giving him the power of discernment and decisiveness that he should do things for me. But why? Usually if you make somebody a power of attorney, because that person has an understanding. And he's united with you that he will do what's good for you, but at the same time, he's a person with a mind. And he can think and make decisions without you having to spell out every single thing. That's why he's the power of attorney. But he acts on your behalf. When he makes a decision, it's like you made the decision. And the same thing is next of kin. Anyone who's next of kin, like in a medical situation, you have to write an emergency, who should you contact? What's the whole point next of kin? It's Amoyed de Kavart. Because, first of all, next of kin means the person that's the closest to you. You're united. Not that they're subservient to you. It's the person that's closest to you. And he's trusted next of kin to make the decision that you want in certain circumstances. For whatever reason, you yourself can't make a decision. So both next of kin and power of attorney bring out the idea of shlichus in an amazing way, I think, in my humble opinion. And that's the first thing the Rebbe says. If we talk about the contrast between shliach and eved, shliach represents cheshivas. It's an important, prestigious term. And eved doesn't have all that connotation behind it. And the second thing is, again, I mentioned the first thing, but I'm just emphasizing, the Rebbe says, the whole idea of shlichus means that the person has a certain sense of autonomy. Not just a yes man. In other words, sometimes you hire somebody for a job and you say, I need a slave. In other words, someone's not going to ask any questions, not going to give any suggestions, just do what I tell you to do. That's what I want. That's what I hired you for. But sometimes, no. That's not what it's about. It's about, I need you to bring something to the table. I need you to make a contribution. I need you to add your brains and your talents and to do what I want, but with your unique contribution. So again, number one, the Rebbe brings from a Gemara where it says concerning shluchim. There's a Gemara that says, we learn it out from a pasuk, Kein terimu gam atem. And it's talking about that you can nominate a shliach to bring truma. And the Gemara learns out from this, why does it say gam atem? It could have just said atem, you, but it says also. The Rabbi says a shliach, that you can make a shliach to do it for you. And then the Gemara says, ma atem b'nei bris, av shluchachem b'nei bris. That to be a shliach means you need a yid. Only a yid can be your shliach. Why? Because the shliach has to be similar to you. So in other words, the shliach is an honorable term. It represents the similarity between the shliach and the mishalech. Between the one who sends you and the one who becomes a shliach. Masha'en king, contrast, if we talk about an Odin and an Eved, there's no similarity. The Odin is a king and the Eved is just the Eved. And the second thing, together with this thing, together with the first point, there's a similarity. It's your autonomy, your individuality. And on that, the Rebbe brings the famous Gemara which says, Odom roitze b'kaf shaloi. The whole point was that in this whole model of shlichus, the Rebbe wanted that you should take ownership, i.e., that you should accomplish something that not because you were explicitly told, but it was your innovation, your creativity, and then it becomes your ownership, but that itself was according to the will of the one who sent you. And the Rebbe brings the Gemara which says, Odom roitze b'kaf shaloi, mitisha kav mishal chaveri. If it would just been that you'd be like an Eved, and it wouldn't involve your contribution, your input, you'd be lacking this whole idea, and it wouldn't go according to the truth of the Gemara, which says that man wants his own kav, which means his own measurement, even if it's smaller than 9 measurements of prados, which is given to you by somebody else. And over here, my friends, when the articles came out about Shlichus and Chabad, so for example, one thing they said is, no other organization is ever be able to duplicate, because any company, IBM, AT&T, I don't know, whatever, Google, I don't know, whatever the biggest companies of the world, Facebook that, they're looking at Chabad and the success of Chabad, and they want to try to copy it. Let's look, like all these articles and studies. You look at the company which is the most successful, and you say, what? Let's try to copy whatever is the secret of success, the formula, and maybe we'll be successful. So, for example, I remember reading one of these articles, and they said, there's no way any other company will be able to adapt the winning success of Chabad. For example, because the Rebbe sent somebody somewhere, it's for life. In other words, the shliach, who is a chassid of the Rebbe, and the Rebbe sends him somewhere, it's for life. So in this article they were saying, no company will be able to duplicate such an idea that once a person gets the job, he'll be loyal and dedicated and devoted to the cause for life. But when you're involved in shlichus and it's about your relationship to the Rebbe, etc. So that was one point they brought out, which is true, but that brings out more the bittul side of it, that regardless of the hardships, regardless of the challenges, the shluchim that are in Ukraine or shluchim that are in India, whatever the story is, they will stick to it no matter what. That shows on the bittul. But then there's the other dimension of it. The beauty of shlichus really is, as the Rebbe himself explains in the Sikha of Tafshin Memches, is that the Rebbe gave every shliach the ball, and he told the shliach to run with it. It wasn't so much that the shliach felt that he has some kind of bosses overlooking every step that he makes, etc., etc. Of course, a chassid felt that the Rebbe is his boss, and he writes reports to the Rebbe. But the Rebbe fostered the independence. The autonomy is essential to the whole essence of what shlichus is all about, as the Rebbe himself explained. When the Rebbe made shlichus, the Rebbe wanted and encouraged and pushed the whole idea of using your intellect, using your talents, using your emotions, and that's how you're going to make a difference in the world. By being you. So this is the paradox. And this is the secret of the success of shlichus, because of the level of autonomy that the Rebbe gave every single shliach. It's such a powerful, powerful, powerful empowerment. Because on the one end, of course, we believe 100% that all our success and and is coming from the Rebbe. And the Rebbe has infinite powers. The tzaddik has infinite powers. But at the same time, it was consistently not about overriding your personality, but by actually digging inside yourself and revealing more and more of your unique individuality. And through that individuality, serving Hashem. There's a famous story, which I don't want to get into it. The Rebbe was very much into this story from Tafshin Yud, from 1950. And as a matter of fact, the Rebbe chose this story. He put it into a Sefer HaToldos of the Admor Marash, of the Rebbe Marash. The Rebbe made a Sefer about the biography of the Rebbe Marash, even before 1950. And he included this story, even though it's not really a story about the Rebbe Marash at all, it's really a story of the Tzemach Tzedek. But he included this story that the Rebbe Marash told. And I believe the reason is because the Rebbe lived with this story. And if I remember correctly, actually in Pasha Shmois, Tafshin Memches, the Rebbe repeated the story without saying the name of this chassid, which I'll tell you soon the story. And there's also letters in the Rebbe's Igros also about the story, which we don't have time already, it's getting late. So I'll just read you the story over here. I'm reading from an old print of Sefer HaSichos, Tafresh Tzadik Vav, page 141. And the Rebbe Marash said over this story that the Rebbe Marash once could not go to Petersburg, that's Petersburg, which was the capital of Russia at that time, and it was a very bitter cold winter, and he sent the shliach of Aaron Belnitzer, who was a person that had a mature mind, a badas betkifus, and he knew how to talk to people of government, and he was a big lamdan. Before he left, the Tzemach Tzedek told him that whenever you'll have a debate, like a shakel v'taya and whatever it is, think deeply Yamek b'zeh v'yachlet v'yamed al daitoi. Think deeply and you'll come to the right conclusion. You'll know what to do. So the Rebbe Maharash said, when he heard about this, the Rebbe Maharash was the son of the Tzemach Tzedek, but he was also a secretary that was involved in a lot of the work of the Tzemach Tzedek that was involved with governments and Askonei HaKlal. So the Rebbe Maharash, when he saw this, he thought to himself that if the Tzemach Tzedek told him, Yishmi Maimed al Daitoi, that means darf man if him Achtung geben. The Rebbe Maharash already thought, he got worried. That means we have to keep on, I have to make sure that he does the right thing. We'll have to watch over it, like monitor the situation. Anyways, after a certain time, after this guy traveled, and the Rebbe Maharash was learning with the Tzemach Tzedek, his father, and in the middle of the learning, the Tzemach Tzedek said, Arachmonas erfahren, matet sich an asofik, weiß nicht, wie zu tun. He said, it's Arachmonas erfahren. He's dealing with some doubt that he has in his mind, and he doesn't know what to do. Anyways, the Rebbe Maharash didn't understand exactly what's the pshat. And then they continued learning. And then the Tzemach Tzedek said, Aaron is a badas, he has a very sound mind, and his maimed al daitoi good cook. He came to the right conclusion very well, very good. And then the Rebbe Maharash said, then I understood, when the Tzemach Tzedek told him that it'll be Yamed al Daitoi, Hainu ki yechaven bezel das amur tzoinoi. When he said, when the Tzemach Tzedek said that this chassid, when he told this chassid that it should be Yamed al Daitoi, he meant that chassid, without having been told what to do, will be Yamed al Daitoi, will be mechaven to the das, to the mind of the Tzemach Tzedek. And this story encapsulates the whole idea of shlichus by the Rebbe throughout all the years. This concept is also in the famous sichos of the Rebbe of Shlach L'chol L'Daitcha. This is similar to what the Rebbe told the lawyers when there was the court case with the Svarim, and the Rebbe said that the lawyers should they should understand what has to be done and what I want, what the Rebbe wants, without me having to spell it out. And by the way, I once read an interesting article. Twice I saw this sort of article talking about the difference between democratic countries, and it was talking about the Israeli army and the Arabs or communist countries. They stress just obedience from the soldiers. So when you cut the head of the chicken or the snake or whatever you want, that's it. Since they're just following the captain or they're following the sergeant, so as soon as we take out the sergeant or we take out the head, the followers don't know what to do. They're lost. But in the democratic countries like America or Israel, they train the soldiers in a different way, that each one has a certain sense of independence, that even if the captain or the sergeant, something happens to them, the other soldiers of the team, of the unit, know how to make decisions on their own according to what would be the will of the sergeant and the captain. Every one of them is trained with a certain sense of independence to be able to take control. And this is the pshat Parshas told us. The idea of told us is bonim, not avodim. Ela told us. These are the children. The children means told us saying kayotzebe, the Gemara says. When it talks about the ovis in Gemara Bava Kama, they're the primary sources of Nezikin. Then there are Toldos, which are the offshoots, the extensions of the primary. And we say that the Toldos have to be similar to the Ovis. So Ben, the whole idea of a child means that you educate the child, and in the end the child makes the right decision, so that when you grow up, the father is confident that even if I don't have to tell him exactly everything what to do in every single situation, he'll do the right thing according to the will of the father, because the child's values and virtues will reflect and represent what the values and the virtues of the father is, or the parents are. But with the added bonus and benefit and profit that is the child's personality. He has a new individuality. Just like, of course, Yitzchak was Ben Avram. Avram hailed as Yitzchak. He had a father like Avram who lived up to whatever Avram represents. Even though Avram is chesed, so it's one type of path. Yitzchak is gvura, it's another type of path. But obviously, Yitzchak's values and virtues reflect whatever Avram is, but with a whole new added twist, with a whole new added dimension. And that's the idea of shlichus. Bonim, Ben. We have an individuality, we have kaf shaloi, and it's all channeled in the right direction, so it comes to the right conclusion. So the Eibusher should help. After this week's Kinus HaShluchim, every single one of us should rededicate ourselves in such a way that we have the right balance of subservience and loyalty, and stick to it for life, even if it involves sacrifice, etc. But at the same time, we have our input, our individuality, our ingenuity. We bring us united with our personality, with our character traits, with our mind, and with our heart, and serve the Eibusher in the right way. The Eibusher should help that through the work of all the shluchim throughout the whole world, we elevated the world and transformed the world and made the world ready to receive Mashiach Tzidkenu. Take from Yad Mamish, posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your shliach in Melbourne.